The polished mahogany tables gleamed under golden pendant lights. From the street, Redwood Prime's Steakhouse looked exactly as it had the day it opened, warm, rich, inviting. But when Ethan Grant stepped out of his rented Camry and closed the car door with a soft thunk, he didn't feel pride. He felt dread. It had been 4 years since he'd last eaten at one of his restaurants in anonymity. That night in Chicago, there had been photographers, champagne flutes, flash bulbs, and 100 handshakes. His photo had appeared on the Culinary Titans of America feature in Forbes. He had smiled then, but tonight there was no press, no applause, just a cheap flannel shirt that didn't quite fit a cap pulled low, and a man nearing 50 wondering if everything he'd built was quietly falling apart. The location in Austin was one of the newer ones. From the outside, it still had that redwood charm, tall windows, rustic beams, and a logo that whispered class without shouting price. But Ethan had learned to see past the lighting. The trash can out front was overflowing. One of the patio bulbs flickered like a nervous tick. The hostess inside smiled, but her eyes never joined the expression. The rhythm felt wrong. 15 years ago, he launched Redwood from a retrofitted food truck in Kansas City. Just a few steaks, big plates, honest food, and a promise no matter how big they grew, people would always come first. That idea took him from lumberyard parking lots to a $120 million chain. But growth was a tricky beast. First came franchising, then private equity, then policies, then people he'd never met writing the company's culture guide. He used to know the names of his cooks and dishwashers. Now quarterly reports showed metrics, turnover, table churn, average ticket, but never truth. Lately, the Austin branch had raised flags, high turnover, negative reviews, 3 general managers gone in under a year. The last one had resigned by text. The corporate team blamed post-COVID volatility, but Ethan didn't believe in volatility. He believed in systems. And if something here was failing, it meant his system had cracks. He took a breath of grilled ribeye wafting from the kitchen vents and stepped inside. "Welcome to Redwood Prime," said the hostess, voice chipper, rehearsed. "Table for one." Ethan softened his tone, pushed his voice a little higher, just enough to disappear. "Yeah, just me. Somewhere quiet if you've got it." She led him to a booth in the back near the fireplace, a view of the whole dining room. Perfect. Ethan scanned the room. Napkins sat untouched on empty tables. A few bread baskets hadn't been cleared. A server passed briskly, not walking, with the confident grace of someone in control, but like a firefighter with no water. The music overhead was too loud. He didn't need more than 30 seconds to know this wasn't just a bad shift. This was cultural rot. A few minutes passed before a server appeared. She looked mid-30s, hair pulled back in a tight bun apron, clean name tag straight. "Hi there, I'm Rachel. I'll be taking care of you tonight. Can I get you started with a drink?" "Just water," Ethan said. Then he added, "And maybe a glass of your house red if it's decent." He smiled softly, reading her response. She nodded with a touch of surprise. "Coming right up," she said, placing the menu in front of him. "Our special tonight is mesquite grilled sirloin with rosemary potatoes. But honestly, the chicken's the safer bet. More consistent lately." She lowered her voice on the last line and walked away. Ethan leaned back, letting the moment settle. That wasn't rebellion. That was controlled honesty. The kind that comes from exhaustion and hope in equal measure. The kind you whisper when you think just maybe someone might listen. He wasn't here for the chicken. He was here because the system bore his name. And somewhere in the clink of glasses, the hurried hush of the kitchen, and the way Rachel kept glancing over her shoulder, Ethan realized the issue wasn't on a spreadsheet. It was in people who had stopped believing they mattered. Dinner played out like a quiet test. Ethan nodded politely, complimented the food, let the steak cool longer than usual just to study Rachel's rhythm. She was efficient, courteous, but cautious. Her uniform spotless, posture straight. But her eyes carried something heavier. Tired wasn't rare in this industry, but this wasn't just tired, this was defense. And every time the floor manager entered the room, Ethan saw her spine stiffen. Other staff moved the same way, fast, silent, nervous. One bartender wiped the same glass for minutes but never looked up. Nobody chatted, not even in passing. When Rachel returned to top off his water, Ethan decided to push just a little. "I'm thinking of sticking around Austin longer than I planned," he said casually. Past a "we're hiring" sign out front. "Might apply." He chuckled like it was a joke. Rachel froze. Not dramatically, just a pause. The pitcher in her hand halted mid-pour. Then she resumed, carefully returning to her role. Depends what you're looking for, she said soft, barely above the clink of silverware. He leaned in. Been doing this a while, he asked. Yeah, she nodded. 5 years. Started at the downtown Redwood. Transferred here when they opened this one. You like it, he asked. The question landed. Her answer didn't come right away. Then a polite shrug. The kind people give when they don't want to lie but can't afford to tell the truth. It used to be better, she finally said. The older locations had a different feel. Different management, maybe. You could breathe. Before he could respond, she pulled herself together, straightened her apron, slipped the smile back on like armor. Ready to order? He nodded. Your honest opinion, what's worth trying tonight? She hesitated half a second, then said, the chicken. It's not the fanciest, but the kitchen doesn't mess it up. He closed the menu. Sold. Chicken it is. Good choice, she said, walking away. Ethan watched her glide between 7 other tables with clockwork precision. Never a mistake, never a ripple. But most of all, never seen. She moved like someone who knew exactly how much attention she was allowed to draw and how much she couldn't afford to. When dessert came, chocolate bourbon cake, a signature from the original food truck days, he tested the line one last time. You know, he said lightly, I really might apply here. This town's growing on me. Slower pace, decent wine. The staff seems nice. Rachel's hand froze just above the dessert fork. She didn't smile. She looked directly at him, not with drama, not with anger, just with clarity. If you're serious about switching careers, she said slowly, there are better options out there. Ethan tilted his head. Oh, Rachel lowered her voice. Look, I probably shouldn't say this, but you seem like a decent guy. This place, it's not what it looks like. They make it sound great online. Good tips, advancement benefits. She scoffed softly. It's a trap. That word, trap, it hit harder than she intended. Not performative. Just true. It stopped Ethan cold. Not because he hadn't suspected, but because hearing it from someone who cared enough to stay cut deeper than expected. He didn't react right away, just nodded slow and quiet. Thanks for the honesty, he said. She blinked suddenly, realizing what she'd just said. Her eyes darted around. I shouldn't have said anything. Forget I mentioned it. And just like that, Rachel slipped back into her role and vanished into the rhythm of the restaurant. Ethan sat there staring down at a dessert he once tested 100 times in a makeshift kitchen on a Kansas City sidewalk. Back then, it had tasted like ambition. Now it tasted like dust. The next evening, Ethan didn't wear the same shirt. That would have been too obvious. But he kept the same slouch in his walk, the same quiet anonymity in his demeanor, as he parked his rental car a little farther from the entrance than last night. Not close enough to be recognized, but close enough to observe. The lot was full. From the outside, Redwood Prime looked like a success. Warm lights, families waiting for tables, servers hustling between booths. But now Ethan knew better. He knew that a packed dining room didn't mean a healthy business. It meant a mask had been polished to perfection. He stepped inside quietly. The same hostess greeted him. Her smile was still tight, still strained. Back again, she asked, her voice attempting lightness. Ethan offered a lopsided smile. Couldn't stay away from that chicken piccata. He requested to sit in Rachel's section again. The hostess didn't ask questions, just nodded and guided him to a corner booth. When Rachel appeared, she hesitated just for a second. Recognition flickered in her expression. Wariness, maybe, or curiosity. Back so soon, she asked, her voice careful, neutral. The chicken was too good to pass up, Ethan said, grinning slightly. And well, still haven't found a place to live. Guess I'm becoming a regular. Rachel didn't smile, but she didn't walk away either. Water and house red again. Exactly. As she walked away, Ethan took in the full room with new eyes. Now that he knew what to look for, it was clearer. The young bartender smiled at guests but flinched whenever the floor manager passed. A teenage server struggled with a heavy tray while others avoided eye contact. And most striking there was a black lockbox mounted behind the hostess stand. Ethan watched as a busboy no older than 17 discreetly dropped a folded bill into it. Not like someone paying a tip. No more like a kid making an offering he didn't believe in. A system like this didn't form by accident. It had been designed. Rachel returned gently, setting his drink down. Ethan leaned forward, his voice low but not secretive, just personal. I've been thinking about what you said yesterday, he said. Rachel stiffened slightly. I shouldn't have said anything, she replied, eyes darting to a nearby table. I'm actually serious, Ethan added, about applying. I've been on the road too long. This town feels still. I need something steady, and I appreciate honesty. Rachel glanced at her watch, then around the dining room. My break's in 15. If you're really curious, meet me out back. She didn't wait for confirmation. She just walked away like it had never been said. 17 minutes later, Ethan stepped quietly around the rear of the building. He found Rachel sitting on a cold metal bench under a flickering light. She was hunched over a paper-wrapped sandwich, sipping cheap iced tea from a plastic bottle. "You've got 10 minutes, she said, not looking up. "And I'm risking my job." Ethan nodded and sat on the edge of the bench. "I get it. I won't quote you. Just help me understand." Rachel took a bite, chewed, swallowed, then sighed deeply, as if she had to refuel to even say it. "This place isn't broken by accident," she said. "It's built this way." She didn't raise her voice, didn't rant. She spoke like someone who had been carrying bricks in her pockets for years. "They cap us at 29 hours a week, just under the line where benefits would kick in. But the workload 35 easy. More if you're helpful." Ethan's jaw tightened slightly. "They're always asking, 'Can you cover this shift or just stay late tonight?' You say yes because you don't want to let anyone down. Then the next week, you get half your hours cut, and someone else gets punished for saying no." She paused, looked down at her drink. "And the tips?" Ethan asked, though he already suspected the answer. Rachel scoffed. "They've got this thing called the tip pool, supposedly to make it fair. Every tip goes into one big pot. Then it's divided monthly." She made air quotes with her fingers. "But the math never adds up. They take out admin fees, whatever that means, or say something broke and needs replacing, or that someone didn't meet performance standards, whatever those are." Ethan didn't interrupt. He just listened. "At best," Rachel continued, "you get 20% of what you actually earned. The rest gone. No paper trail, no questions allowed." "That's theft," Ethan said softly. Rachel didn't flinch. "Technically, they do just enough to make it legal. Hide behind contracts, policy, fine print, corporate language most of us don't understand." She shook her head. "HR doesn't return messages. Bonuses get promised and pushed. Management training delayed every quarter. You're always chasing a moving finish line." Her voice softened. There was something in her eyes now, not bitterness, just reality. "You want to know why we stay?" she asked. "Because we've got kids, parents, medical bills. Because we believe the lie that if we just work a little harder, we'll get ahead." She looked Ethan dead in the eye. "But the truth is, they never meant to lift anyone, just bleed us slowly." Ethan was quiet. The weight of her words landed with a thud in his chest. He saw it clearly now. This wasn't a glitch. This was a system, a trap, and it was happening in his name. "What if someone told your story?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Rachel looked away. "I've been doing this too long to believe anyone's really listening." Ethan watched her closely. "What if I am?" Her expression changed. Suspicion, maybe. A flicker of something else. Hope, perhaps. Then her phone buzzed. "Break's over." She stood brushing sandwich crumbs off her lap. "Be careful," she said, still not looking at him. "You seem like the kind of guy who'd get eaten alive in a place like this." Then she walked away back into the fluorescent hum of the kitchen hallway. Ethan remained seated for a long moment, staring into the dark behind the building. A storm was gathering, not in the sky, but in his gut. The facts were simple. The situation was not. This wasn't a bad manager. This was a machine, designed for profit, lubricated with fear, and powered by silence. And Rachel, this tired, precise, quietly brave woman, had just handed him the match. He intended to light the whole thing on fire. 3 days later, Ethan Grant's hotel room looked like a detective's war bunker. Sticky notes covered the wall-mounted lamp. Payroll documents were sprawled across the bed in overlapping stacks. A giant Texas, Oklahoma, New Mexico map was taped above the TV, red and yellow push pins dotting 15 different cities. Highlighters, black marker trails, a laptop playing muted security footage on loop. What had started as a quiet steak dinner had now become a full-blown investigation. And he wasn't turning back. When Rachel whispered that single word trap, something had cracked inside him. A fracture he hadn't realized was there. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was betrayal. Or maybe it was just the blinding clarity that after 15 years of building something from the ground up, he had no idea what it had become. Redwood Prime was supposed to be about people, about honor and hard work, about food served with pride. Now it was something else entirely, a shadow. He hadn't planned on staying this long in Austin. But what he saw, what Rachel confirmed, made staying unavoidable. He was going to tear back every layer of the smiling corporate mask to see what was underneath. And what he found over the next 72 hours disturbed him more than he thought possible. Ethan drove over 1,000 miles in 3 days. First stop, Dallas. He posed as a freelance photographer scouting local restaurant ambiance for an upcoming Texas cuisine coffee table book. Then Tulsa, as a traveling speech therapist eating between appointments. Finally, Albuquerque, insurance adjuster who needed to dine and observe for a client's risk analysis. The disguises changed. The accents shifted. The backstories were fluid. But the results, always the same. In each Redwood Prime location, the signs repeated like clockwork. Silent robotic staff. Tip jars full but servers looking defeated. Managers hovering, not leading but watching. Lockboxes mounted behind hostess stands. Rumors whispered in back corners. Nobody laughed. Nobody lingered. Nobody trusted. It wasn't just bad management. This was systemic. A system designed not to serve but to extract. Employees never complained directly, of course. Not with words. But Ethan could see the toll-bent backs, twitchy glances, polite smiles that flickered like faulty light bulbs. They weren't working for opportunity. They were surviving a structure built to hold them just beneath reward, just under hope. He returned to his hotel that third night, boots aching, heart heavier than it had been in years. He stared at the map above the TV, connected dots like blood vessels in a disease system. He picked up the burner phone, the one with just one contact saved. Madeline Lopez, his longtime assistant, and the only person who knew he was undercover. He texted, "Need eyes on Springfield Region financials. Skip chain of command, secure line only." Moments later, she replied, "Call me, secured." He dialed. Her voice came in clear but tight. She didn't waste time. "You were right to be suspicious," Madeline said. "I found discrepancies." Ethan sat up straight, grabbed a legal pad. "Talk to me." "The regional manager for your Springfield sector. Rick Dawson, he's been running 2 sets of books," she said. Ethan froze. Madeline continued. "There's an unofficial labor report, falsified shift records, and a second payment flow not reported to HQ. It's not just about tips. It's wage suppression, fraudulent reimbursements, and something he calls performance deduction funds." Ethan muttered under his breath. "How long?" "At least 18 months, possibly longer. And he's doing this alone." Madeline hesitated. "No, he partnered with a payroll vendor called PayShift." Ethan frowned. "Well, that's not one of our approved contractors." "It was pushed through during last year's expansion," Madeline replied. "Rick signed off personally. Corporate let it slide because the paperwork was immaculate. Rates looked great. References solid." She paused. Her next words landed like a hammer. "But I traced the references. They're all shell companies. PayShift was incorporated 3 weeks before it bid for the contract." Ethan stood up, slowly pacing now. "How much are we talking?" "Low estimate, $6 million siphoned from employee wages, tips, bonuses. Funneled through PayShift, routed to offshore accounts." She continued. "Rick just bought a second home in Aspen. A boat. His wife has jewelry that matches 3 years' worth of server bonuses." Ethan felt the cold coil tighten in his gut. And nobody caught this. "Someone in corporate's covering for him," Madeline said. "Employee complaints were marked as resolved. Alerts were rerouted before they ever reached your desk." "Who?" he demanded. "Still digging, but it's above HR, possibly finance." Ethan rubbed his temple. Madeline's voice softened but stayed firm. "There's one more thing. Remember Sophia Nguyen, the auditor who flagged expense inconsistencies last year?" "Yeah." "Her report on Springfield was buried. She flagged the tip irregularities months ago. Someone made it vanish. She's still with us." "Yes, watching, and she wants to talk, quietly." Later that night, Ethan called Sophia. She answered from a dim back office in the Des Moines location. She kept her voice low but focused. "It's not just Springfield," she said. "I've seen similar anomalies in 2 other regions. Different payroll vendors, same deductions, same admin fees." Ethan leaned forward. "It's coordinated." "Yes," Sophia said. "This isn't isolated. It's a strategic exploitation. Hidden in policy, enforced with fear." He stared at the glowing pins on the map. Each one was a restaurant, a team, a family, and someone had turned them into units for extraction. "We take it apart," Ethan said quietly. "No alerts, no drama. We dismantle this from the inside." In the quiet margins of Redwood Prime's daily operations, a new kind of communication was forming. One not sanctioned by corporate, one not measured by customers' satisfaction scores or average plate times. It was a whisper network, and Rachel was at the center of it. 2 days after their secret bench conversation, Ethan gave her two things: a sealed envelope, a small burner phone with one contact list, him, Madeline, and Sophia. In here, he said, handing her the envelope discreetly behind the supply closet, are names of other employees across the region. People like you. People who've seen it too. Rachel didn't answer right away. Her eyes scanned the hallway before she slowly took the items, tucking them into her apron as if they were napkins. They've started checking lockers, she whispered. Random phone inspections. Jesse, the bartender, got fired just last week. Took a photo of the schedule. They said it was a breach of operational integrity. I know, Ethan replied gently. But if they're already doing that, then they're nervous. That means we're close. Rachel didn't blink. What do you need? I need photos of the tip logs, screenshots of pay stubs, copies of shift assignments before and after they're changed. Be careful. Be methodical. Use the phone only when it's safe. Never during shift, never at home, and never alone. She stared at the phone in her hand. It looked like a toy, but it carried more weight than any plate she'd ever balanced. Why me, she finally asked. Ethan answered with no hesitation. Because you were the only one honest enough to warn a stranger. Over the next 10 days, a quiet war began. Rachel wasn't just careful, she was precise. Every movement, every message, every interaction calculated to stay below detection. She wore her role like camouflage, smiling on cue, clocking in early, helping with birthday desserts. No one suspected the polite veteran waitress was building the strongest internal resistance network the company had ever seen. She recruited 5 others from the Austin location. A line cook named Marcus passed over twice for promotion, despite running most of the kitchen. A hostess named Kayla, drowning in student loan debt with 0 health benefits. A dishwasher named Carlos, who suffered from arthritis, but was clocked out every time he sat for a break. A prep cook named June, who hadn't had a full 30-hour week in 3 months. A server in training named Devin told his orientation bonus was pending since January. Each of them connected to others at different branches, and soon the whisper spread. In Tulsa, an assistant manager leaked screenshots of suggested employee write-ups used to justify hours being cut. In Wichita, a teenage busser found a shredder bin filled with uncirculated bonus policy memos, some torn in half but still readable. They revealed that the company had promised advancement bonuses but never distributed them. In Dallas, a veteran bartender opened his drawer to find a tip chart doctored with fake deductions for cleaning supplies even though they brought their own. And all of it, every photo memo and voice note, was routed through Rachel, encrypted through the burner phone, and passed to Madeline and Sophia, who were assembling a report thicker than any quarterly review ever issued by the company. Meanwhile, Ethan pulled back from in-person visits. He couldn't afford to be seen. Instead, he worked from the shadows, redirecting payroll requests, blocking Rick Dawson's access to certain portals, triggering technical issues in Redwood's scheduling system to slow down manipulation, having corporate send out an anonymous internal audit survey that forced every location to respond on record. Rick, for his part, was starting to notice the shift. He called an emergency video meeting for his region. Ethan listened in through a secure line. Rick was calm, too calm. There's been some gossip floating around, he said, his voice syrupy. Let's be clear, no one is watching. No one is listening. If you're loyal, there's nothing to worry about. But loyalty wasn't what Rick was cultivating. He was cultivating control. At the Austin location, Rachel texted Ethan one afternoon. They're on to us. Cameras just got installed in the break room. Phones banned. Random bag checks started today. A new message buzzed across the burner network that night. Ethan sent it himself. We're almost there, just a few more pieces. Don't back down, e.g. The team across 4 states responded with just one word: Tready. But Rick wasn't going down quietly. He showed up at the Austin Redwood Prime in person. Not announced, not smiling. He arrived in a gray designer suit, walking like a man who'd just found fingerprints on his safe. He didn't yell. He didn't even speak much. He stood at the pass window for nearly an hour just watching. Rachel filled Ethan in during a rushed refill at table 6. He just stared, she whispered. Didn't talk. Didn't blink. Then he told the hostess she smiled too much. Said she looked suspiciously cheerful. She was scared, more than she had been before. That night, Ethan didn't go back to his hotel. He sat in his car for 2 hours outside the restaurant, lights off, engine cold, watching. One by one, staff left in small groups. Then finally, Rachel. Hoodie up, head down. Ethan flashed his headlights once. She paused, then walked toward the car. You shouldn't be here, she said through the cracked window. Get in, just for 5 minutes. She hesitated, looked around, then slid into the passenger seat. I know what's happening, Ethan said softly. Not just here. Everywhere, the fake vendors, the tip pool skimming, the hidden complaints. You're not the only one. Rachel turned to him slowly. You're not just some guy looking for a job. Are you? Ethan didn't respond immediately. Then he said no. But I need you to trust that I'm here to fix this, and I've already started. He handed her another envelope and another phone. But this one, it was preloaded with a secure private chat system connecting only trusted employees across the network. Nothing traceable, no corporate fingerprint. Rachel took the phone. They're watching everything she said. They're firing people now for even asking questions. I know, Ethan replied, but this gives you protection. If you move carefully, quietly, if you document everything. Rachel stared at the phone like it weighed 50 pounds. Why me, she asked again. Because Ethan said you still have something they've been trying to break for years, conviction and conviction. Tertonan. That was the one thing you couldn't fake. The knock came 15 minutes into Rachel's shift. She was restocking coffee mugs, one hand, balancing a crate of clean cups, the other adjusting a crooked sign that read, Fresh brews, fresh starts a lie, she thought bitterly if there ever was one. Then the floor manager appeared. Lips pressed tight, voice clipped. Rick wants to see you, now. Rachel didn't flinch. She just set the crate down slowly and followed. They walked past the fryers hissing behind the pass line, past the walk-in fridge with the broken thermometer, past the time clock that conveniently went offline every time someone clocked in 2 minutes early. The door to the back office was ajar. Inside sat Rick Dawson, smiling like someone who'd been waiting to use the word termination all day. He didn't look up right away, just flipped open a manila folder and began reading aloud. Rachel King, 5 years with Redwood, started at the flagship downtown, transferred here, always on time, quiet, reliable. He looked up now and the smile turned sharp. Until now. Rachel didn't speak. Rick slid a spreadsheet across the desk. You've been accessing internal payroll data outside your scheduled shifts. Multiple times. Late at night. Rachel stared down at the paper. It was real. They'd been watching her. We monitor everything, Rick said coolly. It's in your contract. I was trying to understand the bonus metrics, she replied evenly. They've changed recently. Rick chuckled low and dangerous. And photographing schedules, collecting coworkers' pay stubs. That's not curiosity, that's espionage. He leaned forward. We have reason to believe someone is feeding false information to outside parties. Possibly a competitor. That's grounds for immediate termination. He tapped the folder. Your paperwork is already processed. Security will escort you out after this conversation. Just a reminder, your confidentiality agreement includes financial penalties for discussing any of this with third parties. Rachel's stomach turned, but she didn't move. She had expected this. Maybe not today, but soon. Then before she could respond, the door cracked open. The hostess stuck her head in flustered. Sir, I'm sorry, but there's a situation. A group from corporate just arrived. They're asking for an all-staff meeting. They say it's urgent. Rick's smile faltered. That meeting's next week. They're saying it's today. Staff's already gathering. He stood suit rumpled now from sudden movement. Stay here, he ordered Rachel before sweeping out like a general toward a mutiny. Rachel didn't wait. Her burner phone buzzed. One new message. Join the meeting. Sit front row. Trust me. E.g. She stood heart-pounding and walked straight into the dining room. Tables had been pushed to the side. Chairs arranged in rows like a town hall. Staff filled them slowly, uncertain whispering. At the front stood 3 people. 2 women, 1 man. Backs turned. Rachel slipped into the front row. Then Rick Dawson entered from stage right, striding toward the front, fake confident. Good afternoon, he said loudly. I'm Rick Dawson, Regional. The man turned. Rick stopped cold. Silence. It was Ethan Grant, but not the man who ordered house red and chicken piccata 2 nights ago. This Ethan was clean-shaven, sharp blazer eyes, clear and steady. He stepped forward. Surprise inspection, he said. Or, let's call it what it really is, a reckoning. Gasps, murmurs, eyes darting. Ethan continued, voice calm but cutting. For those who don't know me, I'm Ethan Grant. I built this company 15 years ago from a food truck and a promise that good food and good people would go hand in hand. He turned to the staff, locking eyes. But a few weeks ago, I heard something that changed everything. A trusted employee told a guest, "This place is a trap." He paused, let the words breathe. And she was right. Sophia Nguyen and Madeline Lopez stepped forward and opened laptops. A giant screen flickered on behind them, revealing photos, Spreadsheets, shift logs, pay stubs, screenshots, chat logs, tip jar records, bonus policy memos, proof of an intricate, coordinated system of theft and manipulation. Ethan pointed, over the past month, we've uncovered systemic wage theft. Not just money, but trust, dignity, and time. You were promised tips. You were promised training. You were promised bonuses. He turned to Rick. Instead, through fake payroll vendors, shadow deductions, and falsified hours, more than $8.3 million was stolen from the very people who kept this company alive. Staff gasped. One person cursed under their breath. A cook dropped his pen. Rick spun toward the exit, but two security officers blocked the doorway. Real ones, not the ones Rick hired. Rick Dawson Ethan said you are being detained for financial misconduct and employee exploitation. Warrants are already being executed at your Aspen property and corporate accounts. Rick sputtered, but no one listened anymore. As he was let out in cuffs, the room stayed silent. Then a single clap. Then more. The room erupted, not with cheers, but with relief. Ethan turned to Rachel, voice steady, unwavering. This woman, he said, and dozens like her risked their jobs to tell the truth. While I failed to protect you, she showed the courage I should have found years ago. He reached out his hand. Rachel, stunned, breath shallow, stood and took it. Starting today, Ethan said Rachel King will lead a new division of employee advocacy, reporting directly to me. No more buried complaints, no more fake promises, no more traps. The applause was different this time, stronger, fuller, real. For the first time in a long time, the staff didn't feel like workers. They felt seen. As the meeting wound down, staff lingered, processing what had just happened. Ethan leaned close to Rachel. I'm sorry I lied to you. She blinked. Why did you listen? Because real leaders don't build walls between themselves and the people who keep the lights on, he said. They tear them down. The morning sunlight bathed the newly polished floors of the Redwood Prime headquarters, a modern glass and brick building on the east side of Austin. Inside, something entirely new was taking shape. Rachel stood in front of a freshly installed plaque. Employee voice room, every story matters. Her reflection looked back at her in the glass, different from the shy server from 2 weeks ago. There was a quiet steel behind her eyes now. Not arrogance, ownership. Ethan walked in behind her, coffee in hand, smile easy. It's real now, he said, nodding toward the plaque. Because of you. Rachel turned, half grinning. Let's hope it's not just decoration. Ethan raised a brow. It won't be. That's why we're here. They stepped inside the room. It was bright, open, no desks, just couches, soundproof walls, and a small recording station in the corner. Any employee can come in, Rachel explained, anonymously or not. Talk, record, write, whatever they need. Sophia Nguyen entered next, holding a binder packed with transcripts and spreadsheets. We've already got 73 case submissions across 4 regions, she said. Some are years old. One hostess in Phoenix was blacklisted for reporting harassment. A dishwasher in Tampa was paid $2.13 an hour for 3 years straight. Rachel's jaw tightened. Ethan said nothing, just opened the binder, turned a few pages, and sighed deeply. We let too many things rot in the name of performance, he said. That ends now. Later that day, an all-staff town hall was held at the company auditorium. Hundreds of Redwood employees streamed in, servers, cooks, barbacks, janitors, many of whom had never even seen headquarters. The energy was mixed, hope, curiosity, doubt. Ethan stepped up to the podium. Rachel stood beside him. Most of you know me by name, Ethan began. But names mean nothing if they're not earned. He paused. So let me earn it again. He pressed a button. Behind him, a large screen flickered to life, showing video clips: Ethan washing dishes undercover, sweeping, burning a steak, failing to fold napkins properly. Laughter rippled through the crowd. Then Rachel's face appeared on screen the night she whispered, "This place is a trap." Silence. When I first heard that, Ethan said, I was angry. But not at her, at myself, because she wasn't wrong. He turned to Rachel. This woman helped spark something, a reckoning, and now a rebuilding. Applause thundered through the room. Starting today, Ethan continued, Redwood will introduce a new transparency policy. Pay stubs will include full tip breakdowns. Scheduling will be peer-reviewed. Bonuses will be performance-based, but peer-vetted. He looked at them all. No more guessing, no more gaming, no more silence. He stepped aside. Rachel took the mic, hands trembling slightly. I'm not used to microphones, she said, and some chuckled. But I am used to late nights. Burned palms, crying in walk-in fridges, and keeping my mouth shut while managers skip my overtime. Nods all over the room. I stayed because I believed Redwood could be more than a paycheck. And I still do. She scanned the room. So here's my offer. If you've ever been overlooked, mistreated, ignored, or unheard, my office is open. And my phone's on. The applause this time wasn't polite. It was personal. That afternoon, Rachel met with Jesse Hartman, a cook with grease-stained sleeves and weary eyes. I got passed over for lead grill twice, he said. Trained both guys who got it. Let me guess, Rachel said. They were friends with the manager. He nodded. Want to see my phone, he added. I kept every schedule. Took screenshots for 2 years. Rachel smiled, flipping open her notebook. Let's get to work. The next day she met Tina Morales in the courtyard, a hostess who'd left Redwood 6 months earlier after filing a harassment complaint, only to find every restaurant she applied to mysteriously wasn't hiring. I just wanted a job, Tina whispered, holding her toddler. Instead, I got labeled. Rachel held her gaze. We're going to clear your name. She handed Tina a card. Redwood Equity Council, Whistleblower Division. Tina stared at it like it was a key to a door she thought would never open. 1 week later, Ethan presented to the board of directors. Not everyone was pleased. You're upending decades of policy, one board member said sharply. Our legal exposure is massive. So is our human exposure, Ethan replied. Another director frowned. You're giving waitresses authority over finance audits. I'm giving workers authority over their own worth, Ethan shot back. They're not beneath us. They are us. Silence. Then Madeline Lopez, seated beside him, handed out the newest data employee satisfaction scores, up 37% customer retention, climbing social media flooded with gratitude posts from staff. We're not losing money, Ethan said. We're regaining trust. Reluctantly, the board voted to approve all reforms. At month's end, a mural was unveiled in the flagship restaurant's lobby. It depicted real Redwood employees, not smiling stock photos, but tired eyes, proud stances, and real uniforms. The title, No More Traps, Only Doors. As guests walked in that night, some stopped and stared. Others snapped photos. One woman whispered, about damn time. Rachel watched from a corner, her heart steady now. She had once been invisible. Now she was the first face of change. And Redwood, no longer a trap, but finally a place where every voice had a seat at the table. The room was packed. Over 2,000 hospitality executives filled the main ballroom of the Hyatt Regency for the closing panel of the National Restaurant Association's annual conference. The event was themed, Culture Eats Policy for Breakfast. On stage sat 5 industry titans. And right in the middle, Ethan Grant. He didn't look like them. No tailored Armani suit, no cufflinks. Just a navy blazer, a Redwood name tag, and scuffed shoes he refused to replace since his undercover shift. Next to him sat Rachel King, still getting used to being flown first class. The moderator leaned into the mic. Ethan, you've launched one of the most aggressive culture overhauls the industry has seen. Care to explain why? Ethan leaned forward slowly. Because we forgot who we were, he said. We became obsessed with growth and forgot the ground we're growing on people. Rachel quietly nodded beside him. Our lowest paid staff knew more about our culture than our board did. That's the problem. And that's what we fixed. A pause. Then a question from the crowd. What was the moment you knew things had to change? Ethan turned to Rachel. You want to take this? Rachel hesitated, then reached into her leather folder. She pulled out a wrinkled handwritten letter. It was this, she said, written by a dishwasher's daughter, a girl named Maya. Rachel began reading aloud. Dear Redwood, my dad worked 14-hour shifts and still smiled when he got home. But one night he cried in the bathroom. I asked why. He said his manager called him a ghost because no one noticed him. But I notice him, and I hope you do too, because people like him are the reason your door is open. Please remember that. Love, Maya Larkin, age 14. Silence fell over the entire auditorium. Not a phone buzzed, not a fork clinked. We found this letter in a forgotten comment box, Rachel said softly. It changed everything. Ethan leaned back, letting the weight of the words sit. Then he added, Maya's father now leads our kitchen training division. And Maya, she's the reason we created our Family First initiative. No more unpaid overtime. No more overnight shifts without consent. After the session, a crowd gathered around them. Competitors, reporters, skeptics turned silent. Bryce Eldridge, CEO of Sterling Grill, a longtime rival, walked up slowly, arms crossed. That was a strong play, he said, slightly sarcastic. Tug at the heartstrings, win the PR game. Ethan didn't flinch. This wasn't a game. We'll see, Bryce muttered. Margins don't care about emotions. Rachel stepped forward, voice unwavering. Maybe, but people do. And people are who walk through your doors every night. Bryce scoffed and walked away. Back at Redwood HQ the next week, Rachel received an email titled, "I think I work with Maya's dad." It was from a GM in Kansas City who'd recently been fired for embezzlement. Turns out he'd been mocking Maya's father, Carlos Larkin, for slowing down the line when he trained new hires too carefully. Rachel showed the email to Ethan. He read it, then deleted it. "Carlos can teach at his own speed," Ethan said. "Quality takes time. Respect takes longer." Meanwhile, Tina Morales, once a forgotten hostess, now ran the entire guest relations division. She walked into a team meeting with a tablet in one hand and a diaper bag in the other. "I got good news and better news," she said. "Good news, our complaint rate is down 82%. Better news, we're launching Redwood Kids on-site childcare at 3 pilot locations." Her team erupted into cheers. "I already enrolled mine," she laughed. "Because this job shouldn't punish you for being a parent." She looked down at her baby. "Especially not when the whole reason we work is for them." 2 weeks later, Ethan stood in the back of a Redwood Steakhouse in Boise, Idaho during dinner rush. He watched the kitchen move like a symphony. Then his phone buzzed. A text from Rachel. "Check your inbox, it's from Maya." He opened the email. "Hi, Mr. Ethan, it's me, Maya. I heard you read my letter at a big conference. My dad cried when he found out. Happy tears this time. He told me he finally feels seen. So thank you. Also, I want to intern at Redwood when I'm older. Can I?" Ethan stared at the message, then typed back, "You don't have to wait until you're older. Come shadow our CEO for a day next week. If your dad says yes, e.g." The following Friday, Maya walked through Redwood HQ holding a visitor badge, her eyes wide. "You really read my letter in front of thousands of people?" she asked Ethan. "Sure did," he replied. "And it hit harder than any PowerPoint I've ever seen." Maya grinned, then asked, "Do you think my dad is proud of me?" Ethan looked her straight in the eye. "I know he is, but more importantly, we're proud of him, and proud of you." He bent slightly and whispered, "You changed this company with a piece of paper." Maya smiled quietly, confidently, then reached into her backpack. "Well, I wrote another one." She handed Ethan a sealed envelope. He opened it. Inside it simply read, "Don't forget the busboys." The next week, every Redwood restaurant added a wall plaque. Inspired by Maya, "Never forget the ones who clean, carry, and care." It became a mantra, a vow, and eventually, a movement. 6 months had passed. What began as a whisper, one handwritten letter from a 14-year-old girl, had become a full-blown movement in the hospitality world. Inside the newly built Redwood Leadership and Culture Center in Chicago, over 120 new team members sat in a circular auditorium. On the wall, etched in brushed copper, was the motto, "People first, always." A woman in her mid-30s stepped up to the front stage. She wore no name tag, but everyone recognized her. She didn't need an introduction. Rachel King. She stood confidently, looking around the room before speaking. "6 months ago, I was managing complaints from angry customers," Rachel began. "Now I'm here to tell you what happens when a company listens to its people." She clicked the remote. A video played. It showed Tina Morales walking through one of the pilot Redwood Kids centers in Austin, Texas. Her voice narrated over it. "I used to hide my daughter in the supply closet during double shifts. Now she's just downstairs, coloring in a safe room built for kids like her." Cut to Carlos Larkin flipping an omelet during a staff training session. "I was just a dishwasher. Now I teach future chefs how to lead with kindness." The audience erupted into applause. Rachel paused the video, then she said, "This isn't a PR story, this is our story. Yours now too." She looked down for a moment, then added, "And it all started with a little girl and a letter." Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, Ethan Grant sat on a live talk show set at Good Morning America. The host, a charismatic anchor in a bright blue suit, leaned in. Ethan, Redwood's shift from silent hierarchy to employee-led culture has been described as a hospitality revolution. What sparked it? Ethan gave a small smile. "Honestly, I got humbled. I walked into my own business undercover and didn't recognize it." "You've said in past interviews that a 14-year-old changed your entire operation. Tell us about her." Ethan nodded. "Maya. She wrote a letter after her dad came home in tears. He was a dishwasher. She asked us not to forget the ones who clean, carry, and care. And did you, Lee?" "No," he said firmly, "not anymore." The camera zoomed in as he added, "We hired her as a junior culture advisor this summer. She's 15 now, smarter than half my board." The audience laughed, but Ethan wasn't joking. In Phoenix, Arizona, a Redwood branch had just opened its doors. A soft-spoken manager named Deshaun Green stood near the entrance as a line of new hires entered for orientation. He carried an envelope in his pocket, inside a printed copy of Maya's letter. He kept it there like scripture. Read this, he told every new team member. This is what Redwood means now. Behind him, the wall featured portraits, not of celebrities or founders, but of employees, hostesses, dishwashers, line cooks. You make this place run, Deshaun said, and now you're seen. In Atlanta, a skeptical general manager, Marissa Clark, had initially resisted Redwood's new culture programs. It's all fluff, she used to say. Empathy doesn't pay bills. Then her assistant manager, a single dad, had a panic attack during a lunch shift. She offered him the new mental health day off program reluctantly. He took it, came back stronger, more loyal. And for the first time, Marissa sat with her staff during break. You were right, she said quietly. People matter. Her team was stunned. And then, everything changed. Back in Chicago, a surprise was waiting in the Redwood HQ lobby. A local middle school choir had gathered for a spontaneous performance. At the center stood Maya Larkin, now 15, holding a microphone. She looked up at Ethan, who had just stepped off the elevator. You didn't tell me we were doing this today, he said, smiling. I know, she replied. It's a surprise. You said we needed more joy in the building. The choir began to sing an original song she had written. If you see us, hear us too. If we serve you, serve us true. We are more than apron strings. We are hearts with hopes and wings. Ethan had to look away. He was crying. Later that night, Ethan wrote in his private journal, I built restaurants to serve food. Now I build them to serve people. Maya's words weren't just wise, they were sacred. They were prophecy. We didn't just change policies, we changed purpose. And I will never forget the girl who made a CEO remember what it means to lead. 3 months later, Redwood's internal analytics showed stunning results. Turnover dropped by 61%, guest satisfaction up 47%, employee referrals tripled, corporate complaints dropped by over 80%. But the most surprising, 20 other restaurant chains had reached out to replicate the model, some publicly, some quietly. Ethan made one thing clear: we'll help anyone. This isn't about us. It's about raising the floor so the ceiling can rise with it. At a final year-end board meeting, Ethan entered the room with no slides, no charts, just one framed letter. He placed it in the center of the board table. This is our new vision statement, he said. Any decision we make, ask yourself, does it honor this? The room was silent. One director stood. Mr. Grant, are we seriously letting a child set the direction of a $3 billion company? Ethan didn't blink. No, we're letting humanity do it. Epilogue 1 year later. In the lobby of Redwood HQ, a permanent glass display was installed. Inside, Maya's original letter. A photo of Carlos Larkin in his training chef coat, a staff apron embroidered with "Don't forget the busboys." Below the display, engraved in steel, in honor of those who work in silence, may you be seen, heard, and never forgotten again.